Emily eagerly inhaled the scent of pine needles and damp soil as she gazed into the forest, the moon's silver beams dappling the sea of trees stretching seemingly endlessly before her. She had convinced her three closest friends, thrill-seeking Jada, loyal Alex, and skeptical Marco, to accompany her on this remote camping adventure, regaling them with tantalizing tales of the raw, untamed beauty hidden within the darkness of the woods until they reluctantly agreed to her wanderlust pleas. Now, as rosy-fingered dusk settled upon the small clearing they had chosen for their campsite, the four friends worked together cheerfully to pitch tents and gather firewood. Marco valiantly tried and failed to spark the kindling ablaze, his face falling at his sputtering, pitiful flames. Laughing gently, Alex nudged him aside and knelt down, soon fanning Marco's fledgling embers into a crackling crimson blaze. Jada emerged from her half-pitched tent, proudly unveiling an unopened bag of jumbo marshmallows as Emily retrieved their long, sturdy skewers from her overstuffed backpack. As gooey marshmallows browned over the vibrant fire, the four friends chatted lightly about classes, relationships, their career dreams, and plans for the future. Emily leaned back contentedly, relishing this picture-perfect start to their adventure getaway. Yet amidst their laughter and eager banter, a gentle night breeze stirred, whispering through the towering pines surrounding their little campsite. The hushed refrain raised the fine hairs on the nape of Emily's neck, carrying with it faint, unintelligible words she couldn't quite grasp. She blinked hard, shaking off the icy unease slithering down her spine. "It's just the wind playing tricks," she reassured herself as her eyes lingered warily on the looming wall of scarlet-tinged trees. Later that night, Emily tossed and turned restlessly in her sleeping bag, insomnia's talons keeping sleep frustratingly out of reach. She turned onto her back with an irritated huff, glaring at her tent's nylon ceiling swaying ever so slightly. Had the wind picked up? The strange whispers returned, more insistent now, slithering through the wood's dark sea of waving boughs, silencing even the evening symphony of insects. Something about their sibilant cadence made her skin crawl, sending an involuntary shiver through her body, though not a single unnatural sight met her frustrated, straining gaze through the inky darkness. Throwing off her unraveling warmth, Emily crawled from her tent, scrunching her nose at the sudden chill in the autumn night air. Her hiking boots crunched loudly on a carpet of brittle pine needles as she straightened to standing, stretching out the kinks in her back from her attempts at sleeping. Glancing around their small encampment, she realized with faint surprise that Jada's sleeping bag inside their shared tent now lay disturbingly empty. Rubbing her arms, Emily felt an icy fist of dread settle in her stomach. Where had Jada wandered off to in such light clothing this late at night? The previously exuberant fire had itself been reduced to sputtering, half-hearted flames barely clinging to the remaining orange coals. Just as Emily stepped forward, her breath freezing in her chest at the absence of her usually vibrant and fearless friend, an ear-splitting shriek lacerated the darkness. The cry contained a primal terror so visceral, Emily felt bile instantly surge upward like burning acid. Heart now pounding out a frantic staccato rhythm, she raced toward the origin of that blood-curdling scream, Jada's vacant tent. Ripping back the half-zipped opening, carnage greeted her wide eyes racing to comprehend the nightmarish scene. Dark arterial spray across nylon walls, the tang of copper assailing her senses, and no Jada in sight. A broken sob welled in Emily's throat as she whirled on unsteady feet, glimpsing for half an instant out of her periphery vision a humanoid creature so tall and spindly it defied nature, retreating on two impossibly long legs back into the forest's swirling abyss. Over the following day, Emily doggedly ignored the tea Alex gently but insistently pressed into her numb hands until it grew tepid and bitter, the downturned corners of his worried eyes mirroring the anguish bleeding unspoken across her face. Hacking past the knot in her throat that curdled into bile at stray flashes of carnage from the previous night, Emily managed to rasp out a single word, "Skinwalker," before dissolving again under the crushing weight of her grief. Her hands shook with fine tremors as she scoured page after page online, manically collecting every last folk tale, and warning about the vengeful, shape-shifting demon known to terrorize these ancient woods, hungering eternally for chaos, violence, and fear itself from any hapless human in reach of its needle-tipped claws. When her screen became an incomprehensible blur, Alex firmly pulled Emily's laptop away. His strong hands gently gripped her shoulders as he leaned down, his familiar smell of cedar and worn leather breaking through her catatonic stupor, reminding her she wasn't alone in this nightmare. Emily blinked back hot tears, managing to meet his comforting gaze as she repeated in a fractured whisper that, according to one obscure account passed down through the centuries, the skinwalker could be weakened through an ancient herb only found in the lightless heart of these cursed woods. Alex's eyes hardened with resolve as he gave one sharp nod. Together they rallied an inconsolable Marco from his fetal position by Jada's ravaged tent. "We can kill this thing with some magic plant?" Marco's voice emerged raw from days of screaming hysterically into his pillow. He swayed slightly as Emily gripped his shoulders, funneling every last ounce of her flagging strength into projecting a confidence she did not feel. "We have to try. For Jada, I can't let it take anyone else from us." Alex remained stalwart as their battered group ventured into the woods over the following days, ominously dark even under the rays of noonday sun. They stumbled over gnarled roots through sucking mud, fending off swarms of ravenous insects with hands sticky from the pungent salve Emily mixed to ward off bites. Marco withered first under the darkness mind games, his ranting growing increasingly unhinged. Only Alex's steady grip on his forearm kept him placing one boot in front of the other, until finally they unearthed the sacred herb needed to weaken the skinwalker, where it lay mysteriously preserved in a leather pouch within an ancient hollowed oak, as if waiting for their arrival. That night, their last before facing the skinwalker, long-buried resentment Marco had secretly harbored toward Emily boiled over as she tended the fire. All of this, it's your fault," he suddenly exploded, chest heaving as Emily jerked her head up in shock. "You and your risky adventures. You pushed Jada and me to come out here, prattling on dreamily about the beauty of the wilderness. Well, look around, Emily. There is no beauty here. Just death and pain and darkness because of your selfish thrill-seeking. Your obsessive hunt for the next dopamine rush put our lives in danger. Jada paid for our loyalty to you with her life, and now you want me to sacrifice myself too?" His words slammed into Emily, their onslaught more bruising than any blow. She reeled, speechless in dismay at the years of hidden bitterness pouring out from Marco's soul like putrid bile. Alex leapt to his feet, but Marco was already stumbling away from the fire, crashing recklessly into the woods alone as darkness descended rapidly. Howling abruptly pierced the night, unnaturally loud and close at hand. Emily's head snapped up toward that blood-curdling cry, seeing the inhumane visage of the towering skinwalker already barreling toward them from the gloom faster than should have been possible. With Marco still missing, she and Alex stood shoulder to shoulder, the only family they had left in this forsaken place. "We end this. Tonight," Emily snarled through her tears. Side by side, they faced off against the monster in that moonlit clearing where it had first ripped Jada from them. Alex swept its gnarled legs out from under, while Emily vaulted onto its back, chanting the purification spell as she sought an opening to plunge the herb into its reptilian flesh. But the creature was impossibly fast. It whirled in place, needle-tipped claws slashing as Alex just barely leapt clear. Its curved talons found Emily's legs next, shredding skin as it slammed her to the ground. Her agonized scream cut short as her lungs emptied forcibly. Gasping through searing pain as her ripped flesh burned, Emily watched helplessly as the skinwalker rounded on defenseless Alex. Its jaw unhinged, needle fangs glinting wetly in the darkness as it reared up for the kill. From the shadows, Marco's defiant battle cry followed by crackling underbrush pierced the standoff. The skinwalker instinctively whirled at this newest threat, and Marco burst from the trees, his bloodshot eyes finally at peace. Time slowed to a crawl as Marco charged directly toward the creature's exposed flank, his fingers locked securely around a hefty branch sharpened to a wicked point. Before the skinwalker could fully turn its corpse-like body, Marco drove his makeshift spear deep into the monster's ribs with a sickening crack. Howling in fury and surprise, the skinwalker backhanded Marco violently. His limp body sailed through the air before striking an ancient oak. His head lolled at an impossible angle as he slid to rest unnaturally at its roots. Emily choked at the gruesome final sacrifice of her lifelong friend, the last dregs of Marco's bitter resentment, now replaced by selfless courage. Weapons still embedded uselessly in the skinwalker's oozing black blood, Marco's attack had succeeded in distracting the horror for precious seconds. Seizing the opportunity Marco had gifted them, Alex tackled the skinwalker brutally to the leaf-strewn floor of the woods. They grappled violently as Emily staggered upright, shrugging off the white-hot complaints of her body to grip her dropped herbs and book of spells. She inhaled a trembling breath and stalked toward the warring pair, the skinwalker's claws raking brutally across Alex's chest, even as he wrapped wiry arms around its neck from behind. With Alex clinging stubbornly to the monster's back, Emily drove forward and plunged the charmed herbs straight through its heart, twisting viciously while she screamed the purification incantation over and over until her voice went hoarse. An unearthly shriek rent the air, shaking the very trees. The skinwalker reared up, suspended for several heartbeats with Alex clinging to it like a rodeo rider. Then black ichor poured from its fanged mouth as its body began dissolving into ash, swirling away in the night breeze. Its glowing crimson eyes locked onto Emily's, promising torment beyond the grave, before disappearing into the void like two dying embers. As the creature fully disintegrated, Alex crashed limply to his knees. Emily was at his side in an instant, hands pressed firmly against the gashes in his chest still oozing blood. Over his halting protests, she quickly bound the wounds, relief washing over her as his clear eyes met hers, still holding their familiar warmth and comfort, even as his face went milky pale. Though grief and trauma permanently marked their souls, they had survived this nightmare together. And for now, that meant there was still light and hope left for them in this world. Marco's final act of courage redeemed his bitter decline, proving that their bond ran deeper than teenage friendship. They all paid dearly so that two could walk away alive, leaving this darkness behind for good. In the muted days that followed, Emily sensed a change sweep the recently cursed woods. The trees stood taller in warm sunlight, now unobscured by the skinwalker's brooding presence. Even the birdsong sounded clearer and sweeter to her ears. But while foul magic had been purified from this ancient land by herb, fire, and blood, she knew no ritual could ever heal the deep wounds, emotional and physical, she and Alex would forever carry. As the pair trekked in resolute silence away from that remote place of suffering, Emily turned back once more to glimpse the emerald forest, now tranquil and still, where they had endured such agony. They left the secrets of that land buried forever under pine needles and leaves, but secrets rooted far deeper within the human heart lay exposed raw to the elements. The truth of darkness staining one's very soul, unknowable until confronted with terror in the night, of bitterness and loyalty intertwined, and of the liberating power of sacrificing for those you love when tangled in the razor claws of senseless evil. Turning her back on the primeval forest at last, Emily walked toward an uncertain future at Alex's side without looking back.